For those tuning in, welcome to the Open Compute Project podcast. My name is Rob Coyle with the Open Compute Project. We are here at the beautiful Lisbon Convention Center in Lisbon, Portugal. It is April 25th, and I'm here with Raul. Raul, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Raul. So I go back as actually with 20 years of experience in the data center world, in data center operations. Been working mostly on the research facility and science part of many organizations on IT. So most of the time they have their own data centers, and that gave me the opportunity to quickly, let's say, grow in that market. And I started to be involved with Open and Open Compute when I joined a company called Submer.
Yeah.
And I was advocating for OCP over there and moved that OCP part forward and that relationship with you guys. And then all of that took over. And right now I'm working for as an independent consultant, still working on the same areas that most of the time OCP promotes: sustainability, open standards, and try to bring all of that to the industry and helping that industry to grow, mostly focused in Europe. And at the same time, I haven't lost that connection with Open Compute. Quite the opposite, actually. I'm still very active in the immersion cooling workstream, with actually leading one of the most important work groups there, addressing the immersion cooling challenges. And at the same time, I've recently joined the EMEA Community Workgroup, actually leading that alongside with a group of people, which is actually being a very interesting experience that I'm happy to discuss.
Yeah, I think we'll dive into that. Go back a little bit.
Sure.
You started at Submer, you mentioned, which is an OCP member. It sounds like you helped forge that relationship between Submer and OCP. When did that start? When did you join Submer?
Well, that was actually 5 years ago, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
And I mean, it was all about trying to capitalize how we can actually reach a very, very important market for a technology which is actually very not innovative and related with change. So at that point, the idea is to be somehow related and actually to remove the friction, going and scaling up to, again, hyperscalers.
Sure.
And trying to adopt this set of standards to remove that friction. And that led to what we actually have now, what they have now at Submer, which is actually a very nice implementation of an open rack for immersion cooling in partnership with many other OCP vendors.
Yep.
Which is actually something that we started implementing when I joined, and I helped push forward.
Fantastic. Yeah, it sounds like it takes time, but it's a company who had a very innovative technology, looking for standards, and now it's evolved into this whole ecosystem with other vendors. Is that? I mean, I know the answer from the U.S. side and how we have ecosystems, but how does that apply in Europe? And are you seeing other examples like that where there's companies working together all on open standards?
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's actually the way to go if you think about it. I mean, when you actually take a good look at the data center market and the standard data center market, no company does it all in that sense. So it's always natural, and actually it helps you, let's say, evolve fast when you're actually joined with good partners, and you can actually, let's say, dedicate your expertise and get your expertise focused on one area of expertise of interest, like, for instance, immersion cooling,
right,
fluids, so on.
Yeah, there's scope's fairly limited at that point, right? We have a tank, we have fluids, maybe.
Exactly.
But there's lots of other parts and pieces.
And even with fluids, actually, it makes sense to actually go beyond in that sense. There's actually a full ecosystem right now of companies offering fluids. But that's the point. It's actually like creating a picture with different elements, and that picture is actually a solution that a customer will buy from you.
Right.
And that actually became very apparent and very evident when we started working on that. So it was actually something that was fundamental to be able to develop that. So I can actually speak about Murata. I can speak about other companies actually working on that solution. And the great thing is that all of that is open. So that implementation and that, let's say, knowledge is completely released upon the Open Compute Foundation.
Yeah.
So anybody that wants to capitalize on that is able to get there quickly.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to capitalize on it, right? Like maybe you want to deploy a similar solution, or maybe you're a component vendor who has a similar component, wants to join that ecosystem, right?
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah.
And so you're focused on, you mentioned two projects. One is in the cooling environments project, which is one of our top level projects.
Yeah.
And I imagine you're focused in immersion. Are you in other areas in cooling?
Well, mostly about immersion, but if you think about it, it's I'm not acting as a subject matter expert anymore. So with that work that we are doing in the immersion cooling environments, with the immersion cooling challenges, it's more about listening about the industry needs and mostly about the industry challenges on working with immersion cooling, adopting immersion cooling, the challenges on the vendor ecosystem as well, and working alongside the community and working with those companies, trying to come up with strategies to mitigate those challenges. We are talking about a technology which is fundamentally, radically different about what the market is used to.
Sure.
Even with Open Compute, which is actually a radical change in the data center industry, and I wanted to actually discuss about change. The data center industry, or the classical data center industry, is an industry that moves slowly. You have large breakthroughs like AI, for instance, and we are seeing this right now, which is actually pushing for big changes. But if you take a good look at the classical perspective, we are talking about mission critical facilities. We are talking about, lowering the risks and so on. So coming from that side, how do you introduce a radical new change, a radical new technology to that ecosystem, to that market?
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly a challenge. So when we do that through the projects, and we're talking now a little bit about cooling, but then you're also the co-lead for EMEA project. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, radically different. So what we're trying to do, and actually I'm picking up the pace from, and I want to mention them because this didn't start with me or the current situation that we had right now. I want to mention Stefan Frenzel and David Jonasarian.
Absolutely.
Which they actually started working on that project. They took a new change, a new role, and they are actually working on different projects right now outside of Open Compute. And I had the luck of being very close to those guys and being very involved with the EMEA community to actually get on that role when they decided to part ways.
Yeah.
And the work there is radically different. The work there is about how we raise awareness about OCP in Europe, how we forge those alliances, how we influence the industry, how we work with the already, let's say, existing partners in Europe to not only help them but enrich that ecosystem. So it's been a very interesting line of work because one of the strategies that we have implemented. So it's all about understanding the regions inside of the European market. So coming from the let's say maybe the American perspective.
Sure.
Even if Europe is a large continent, it's a set of countries, a set of different markets.
Right.
And you need to know how to address them, how to work with them. So this is precisely what we are trying to achieve here.
Yeah. So now you lead a specific focus for the European market.
Yeah.
That David and Stefan helped start.
Well, I need to say that I'm actually not leading that by myself. On the contrary, I'm co-leading that with the help of Jerome Burks in the Netherlands.
Okay.
We have the support from Lesja Dimit, which is actually your EMEA liaison here in Europe.
Yep.
And the rest of your members working with us. And then we have regional leads. So we have Ruben Garcia on the Southern Europe. We have François Douanesac for France. We have Stefan Hack in UK and Ireland. We have Antti Laine in the Nordics. So we are just a set of people pushing forward.
Yeah, but it sounds, you have all different geographic perspectives, which is really good because even in our teams in the US, which is, where OCP started, we have domain-specific representatives, but we don't really have regional.
Yeah.
That's got to be one of the biggest differences between the US and Europe.
Yeah.
Is because you have different regulations, different requirements, even product, right? You can't necessarily ship from one country to another throughout Europe like you can in the US between states. As long as it can make it within the borders of the US, that's not an issue we ever face.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's say the focus in terms of domain specific, this is something that we are working together on this with your help, actually. But the main focus is actually this kind of outreach activities that we are doing. For us, it's fundamental to work with people that are actually in the market, speak the same language, same culture, and they have exposure to the data center market. So those guys, they are not, they are not marketing people. They are actually people that are actually well ingrained into the data center industries on every country. For instance, Antti in the Nordics, he's actually a member of the Finnish Data Center Association. We are talking about people that are actually have presence and have knowledge on the data center industry in every
experience working in it or developing solutions for it. Yeah, exactly. I would say similar. Our membership across the globe, the vast majority is not marketing and sales. It's engineers sharing their time. Their companies have invested their time into developing the solution. So it sounds like the same in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the focus that we are actually taking, and I want to go back to outreach.
Yeah,
it's about how we engage with every market. So bottom line, there's actually around almost in every country a data center association of sorts. This is usually a group of industry representatives. Let's call it that. For instance, rack vendors, cooling solution vendors, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And they have certain influence and they have certain presence on the market.
And they're regional, and now you're speaking domain specific as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that we try to do, at least here for this regional summit, as we are actually doing this here in Portugal, in Lisbon. So Portugal DC, Portugal Data Center Association, they were recently founded a couple of months ago. And we invited them to this discussion with OCP here in the regional summit, because we understand that if we want to support and if we are actually doing events and outreach in every country, we need to have some local discussion and local support. Yeah. And that led to very interesting discussions on how we can support open hardware and open source solutions here in the Portuguese market.
Okay, great. I like where you're going with this. So we talked about some of the challenges being regional, and then how currently the ecosystem's starting to build. And it sounds like we're in maybe chapter one of this bigger story.
Yeah.
Well, why is open important to this challenge? How does open play a role in this diverse geography, and then within those geographies, all these domains? I mean, it sounds like a lot of groups, a lot of siloing or segregation.
I think open is the key topic and the key thing that ties everything together.
Okay.
In that sense, what we are actually able to do, and the beauty of open solutions is that this kind of solutions coming from open compute, this kind of infrastructure, this is something that it's already in production, it's already deployed. And there's a track record of these kind of solutions working in the
Yeah,
street.
being a success.
Being successful.
There's a lot at this conference. I mean, it's really interesting to hear it from the European perspective of especially smaller companies or regionally specific countries. You know, they only do business in France or they only do business in Germany, whatever it may be, that they've been deploying these solutions for a long time.
Yeah.
And we hadn't, I think we were aware of it, and I think they were leveraging some of the open solutions, but we weren't really involved the way we are today.
Well, I think that, I mean, if you look it into, I mean, if you put this into perspective, if you think about the traditional data center market, and if you think about open compute and the let's say slice of the pie that open compute represents, even if in terms of global presence and global computing, the hyperscale is just a fraction of the overall market in terms of architecture. So it's actually being capitalized by a small set of companies,
right?
But nobody else is actually implementing that.
Yeah, they have a lot of visibility,
yeah,
being the size of the companies that they are.
Yeah. But even with that, if you go to a small market, let's say, I'm going to go back and put an example on let's say I'm a small research institute that I want to deploy my own data center.
Okay.
You could think that traditionally open compute, it's not your way to go because this is not the scale that you want to go, because you're actually associating open compute with hyperscalers.
Right. And you don't have the resources to deploy open. You don't have the engineers. You don't have the scale.
But that's where at least this is where the argument of let's say open compute and the answer about all of that is that why we shouldn't implement, why open compute couldn't be, let's say, targeting those other enterprise markets rather than just the hyperscale. And that's actually the premise on the European market and the work that we are trying to do here in Europe, because the hyperscale market runs by themselves.
Yep,
that works. Facebook is Meta is gonna open more data centers. All of the model is already laid down. All of the adoption works by themselves.
Sure.
So on. But then what about the enterprise data center market?
Good point.
So what we are actually trying to do is, as Open Compute already did, we are building those ecosystems to be able to cater to that small scale enterprise market, because it makes sense. We are taking the most of what OCP has to offer in terms of sustainability, in terms of potentially reusing that that supply chain, and actually ticking the boxes on circular economy, sustainability, ease of deployment, ease of use. So we are actually outgrowing the hyperscale market and trickling down over that enterprise market. That's actually the point in Europe.
Yeah, it's very evident when you're at our regional conference here in Europe that there's way more small companies, way more enterprise than ever. You mentioned something specific, and I think it's interesting to notice the differences between the U.S. and Europe on sustainability. So why is, I mean, we hear sustainability is so important, but you have EU directives. You also have inter-country requirements that are different across that. How does sustainability come into play? And I guess first, before we go into that, is you say target the European market. I mean, targeted is like we're building communities within these regions, and then they're addressing sustainability. How does it work?
We are when I say enabling the market, is that we are enabling business in the market around open compute, and actually growing the communities as well. So we are starting with awareness. We are supporting the already OCP partnerships in place
that are already there.
They are already there. I can actually tell you about France, for instance, with Scaleway, with 2CRSI. We have some partnerships with HPE as well. but those are just a few.
Yeah.
So we want to take those, we want to reinforce those, and we are going to be more than welcome to work on more to grow that market.
Okay.
And we want to do the same thing with the rest of the markets inside Europe. So the DACH region, we have excellent support there with partners, Netherlands as well.
So with this community and those partners, you're going to tackle things like sustainability. You mentioned being a top issue. There's others, right? There's other issues that you're going to tackle. But let's start with sustainability, or at least focus on that.
In terms of sustainability, there's actually a strong regulation, and Germany is actually a very good example of that.
Okay.
On reporting regulations and sustainability metrics tracking for the data center industry, which are going to be enforced. There's been a huge backlash on this, mostly because this came. This actually puts in place a set of regulations that are actually kind of. Well, I'm not going to say it's hard, but it's going to be a challenge for the traditional data center market to be able to adopt.
They're not ready to comply with this yet.
They are getting ready for that.
Okay.
And the main driver for OCP solving sustainability is that most of those challenges, if they are not solved already with OCP, they can be solved easily with OCP rather than with the standard enterprise market. So when I think about life cycle management of equipment, when I think about how the systems and racks are actually designed to be lean, without any kind of vanity elements on the servers.
Sure.
So all of that is actually maybe it's consequence on the design to actually to a for scale design or design for scale. But at the same time, it has the consequence that is actually helping with your sustainability metrics. Because you're actually implementing a more sustainability infrastructure with that. It has to do as well with the data center design guidelines implemented by OCP as well, that are actually, let's say, allowing you to not include elements that are actually affecting your efficiency as a data center operator, for instance.
Okay.
And many other considerations that OCP helps to solve on sustainability.
So on the maybe the rack side, you said vanity free. I mean, those would just be kind of a coincidence, right? It was built for scale.
Exactly.
It was for reduction of capex.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to the European market, you're like, well, that would work for us because it's potentially a reduction in material, things like that.
Yeah.
But we have to, if that wasn't the intention of the design the first, now we have to kind of tailor it to these regulations, and there's got to be data behind it. Those are things we got to solve for, right?
Well, you can actually make the case that in the quest of a design for scale, you need to have efficiency embedded into that as well, right? So yeah, you can say that it's actually potentially an unintended consequence, which is actually very interesting and very funny if you think about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why it's kind of closing the circle if you think about it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And not only that, I mean, well, right now it's not only coming from technology, but on let's say other initiatives like sustainability working groups from OCP as well. This is actually being a huge and strong focus. And there are other very nice developments, and I want to actually touch on some of those, and actually on one OCP startup based in Germany.
Okay.
And they are trying to build more sustainable solutions, for instance, building racks with other elements than metals, like, for instance, with wood.
Right. Okay, interesting.
And because wood, it's actually let's say, a better material in terms of production emissions. You are actually capturing carbon using wood instead of, burning fuel to actually make a rack made of
steel.
Steel and so on, right?
So hold on. This is going to be radical, I think, for people that are listening. and we've seen timber constructed buildings that have claims of their, or have proven their reduction in carbon because of the trees that were created and the ability to harvest the structure. There's a lot of efficiencies. But you're talking about IT equipment with wood in the data center.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a radically different.
It is. And just to be honest with you, I mean, if you asked me about this a couple of years ago, I would say, I mean, okay, you're crazy, man. What are you doing with wood?
Sure.
Right? But no, it has been demonstrated, and it's actually, I mean, this is something that you can actually buy from that company. And
what company is that?
This is actually Wooden Data Center.
Wooden Data Center.
With Carl Rabe.
Okay.
And they are not only working in this kind of projects with wooden racks, but they are actually building small modular data centers made of wood as well, and other IT elements or infrastructure elements like telecommunications towers with wood. It's actually a radical and different vision.
But it's similar. They could look to things like at the start of our conversation with Submer, and you'd mentioned the ecosystem and all the other components. They're doing it too. I saw it. They have a rear door heat exchanger built, but the structure around the fan units are wood. It's timber.
Yeah. And just to be honest with you, not all of the rack materials are actually made of wood.
Sure, not everything. You still connection points, things like that.
You need the supports, the connection points, but it's actually a very nice example of, getting there. So you can actually say that maybe 80-85% of the whole structure is made of wood.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Yeah, I guess it does.
And this goes very well with one trend, and I'm actually discussing something completely different. There's a new architectural let's say trend in Northern Europe about building doing buildings with timber as well.
Yeah, the building itself.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the ecosystem and things, and maybe that was unintentional. I mean, in an open ecosystem, Submer couldn't have known when they partnered, and you worked with them and helped develop a partnership with all the other companies that had to be able to immerse their equipment in liquid and have material compatibility testing and evaluate that. Is that became a blueprint or a structure for Carl Wooden Data Center to say, I need partners to now interact your equipment in a timber structure as opposed to wood?
No, I don't think that the connection was there. Even if we somehow, and this is something that, I mean, because I'm very close with Carl, and we usually like to sit down and joke around and throw some ideas. And I mean, the other day we were playing around with the idea of, hey man, why we don't do a timber-based liquid immersion cooling, and I was joking around doing, let's do a wooden bath, something like that.
Well, they build boats out of wood, so I mean,
but I don't think that the connection was there. I mean, if you are actually looking for the sustainability connection, you can actually make that case.
Okay.
No, but I think that it was about fundamentally understanding what are actually the challenges of the IT and data center industry around carbon emissions and embodied carbon emissions.
Yeah.
And see how you can actually look for alternatives to that. And timber is something that if you go back in time, well, and for most of the construction, I guess right now this is actually taking off again. It's been there already.
Right.
So
why not in a data center?
Why not in a data center? So you go there, you take that blueprint, because this is actually the beauty of open compute. Everything is open.
Yeah, you had access to the standard.
You get the access
for ORV3.
For RV3, and you do this. You do your own implementation for RV3. As long as it holds up, it passes all of the specifications laid down by the blueprint.
Right.
You are good to go. And that's the beauty.
Yeah, that's the beauty of an ecosystem.
And you have a very nice example here today at the Innovation Village, where you can actually see one of those here. So
yeah, we have that's kind of new. Is we had the OCP Experience Center, which was a region at our global summit in October. where the projects and the companies working on the projects would have live demos of things that were either recently released or going to be released. That we've changed the name of that to Innovation Village, and we brought it here to Europe.
Yeah.
I guess an added showing of our investment in Europe, and showing how things like data center rack made out of wood is a possibility, and people can consider it for themselves. That's great.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier about other partnerships in the European region, and then the sustainability. So now we have solutions. What other organizations do we have in Europe that OCP is starting to work with?
So actually, I mean, we started working with, and that's actually a very, very interesting relationship. But because if you think about it, it all connects and makes sense.
Because you said nobody does it alone, and I guess that means companies within an organization,
Absolutely.
but also other organizations, other ecosystems. Because in the U.S. we have software partnerships and other organizations all over the globe. I imagine we're going to have that in Europe as well.
One of those that we started working with, but it's actually not new at all, because at least that discussion that we had enabled, or they already been working with OCP for the APAC Regional Summit. This organization is Open Infra. And Open Infra is the organization behind OpenStack and open cloud initiatives like OpenStack.
Okay.
You can actually think about them as the open compute of open clouds in that sense. So we reached back to them. They are actually, they have a very nice outreach strategy. They are doing these kind of small workshops. They are called Open Infra Days.
And they're across Europe?
They are across Europe. So think about France, think about Switzerland, think about Germany, and I think that it makes sense in the sense that we are working towards the same goal, but on different directions. Well, not on the same direction. What I want to
different
say,
layers.
Different layers, exactly. So what I want to say is that a discussion with Open Infra reveals very quickly that we are completely complementing each other for an end user. So as Open Compute is actually focusing on open hardware solutions, they are focusing on open source and open cloud solutions. So the potential of building and partnering up to build open cloud solutions, and there's actually a very nice example of this in their event in Germany, and I'm going to check the dates because so bear with me for a second.
Yeah, no problem. Well, while you're looking for that, so it sounds like another stark difference between the European market and the US market. Not that enterprise doesn't exist in the US, but as you said before, such a big part of it had been for hyperscalers or operators that are operating their own cloud, either a private cloud or public cloud, whatever it may be. You kind of need partners like this, right? Because
exactly. And I'm going to show you this. It's kind of, well, I know that we are actually on a podcast format, so we cannot show this around. I'm going to show it to you.
Well, we could put a link when we publish it.
We can actually do that. But this is actually the event dates. There's actually one event in it's actually the 15th of May in Berlin. And this Open Infra Day is actually very special because this is actually co-hosted by an initiative called Sovereign Cloud Stack.
Okay, I'm not familiar with them.
But this is actually the realization, and this is actually supported by the European Union, the realization of an open source, open standards cloud for Germany, sovereign cloud, based on open source technologies, based on open infra solutions on top of open compute.
Wow.
Hardware. And this is something which is actually been in the works, and some partners that we have in Germany, they are actually fully supporting that, and it defines, it helps immensely on creating, let's say, blueprints for an open cloud in every other region, and they are actually starting there.
So they're starting in Germany?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So May 15th,
May 15th,
2024.
2024.
Okay. You can register. What's this website? This is...
Yeah, this is, well, I will share the link with you.
Yeah,
We
sure.
can
And I'll
actually
post
share
it. But it's
there.
Open Infra.
It's Open Infra, yeah.
Okay. And then if I read further down the page, and this I am familiar, as you mentioned earlier, is we had already been partnered with Open Infra on Asia.
Yeah.
So they have a large event in Korea.
Yeah.
And we'll be there in September?
September, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, September. The way Open Infra works is that they have these kind of regional groups that somehow they are kind of independent. And this is why I guess that we had that relationship going on for APAC, but nothing had been worked on Europe, and now we uncovered all of that. Our intention is actually partner up with them, have presence in some, if not all, the Open Infra days.
Yeah.
Because I think that we are complementing very well. We can discuss about OCP, and we can actually support them as well to raise awareness on open solutions.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Part of it, and in our other interviews with, part of it is just a mentality about open. And if you're working with other people who are open, I think it just enhances the argument for open, and it's kind of proof that it's a good solution. It works.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's actually creating this momentum for the industry to adopt these kind of solutions, because, and I think that, I mean, going back to open source, that was usually the case 30, 40 years ago, and then 1991 happened, and some Finnish guy created something, and the industry took along much more later, right? But now you can say that the triumph of open source is an operating system which is actually running on 90% or even more of the data centers in the world.
Most people don't know they're using open.
Yeah. So I mean, the case is already made. For that. So we are actually seeing right now that the current situation is that we have somewhat closed hardware running open source solutions, in a way.
Yeah.
Fully supported by commercial companies. But why not going the extra mile?
Right.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we're working on in Europe.
But it needs an ecosystem, right? You can't. Nobody does alone, and the layers don't do it alone either.
Exactly.
So
you need that ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it.
Okay. Any other alliances or activities in Europe that we should know?
In terms of outreach, we are actually partnering up with to have presence in most of the data center events, important data center events in Europe. So
that's things like DCD,
exactly.
Things like that. Okay.
DCD, Data Center World, and Cloud Expo.
We just presented at Data Center World. Some of our colleagues. You were there too, right? At Data Center World.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was there in London the other day. There's actually about DCD, for instance, and working on the southern Europe region. We're having discussions with DCD for their upcoming DCD Connect in Madrid, in Spain, to create a small workshop there with the help of Rubén García, our regional lead in Spain.
Oh, yeah.
And with Jaime Comella, which is actually representing OCP for AQ Compute.
Yep. Jaime.
So to have some presence there and to work on outreach. Because if you think about it, and going back to Submer, if you look at the Spanish market, that's the only OCP player in that market.
Yeah.
So we need to, again, that's actually barren land that we need to explore.
Invest,
we need to invest. We need to outreach, and we need to grow that ecosystem there.
Okay, so if I'm in the technology space, for example, and this would have spread across Europe, this example, but so if I'm in Spain and I'm hearing this podcast, I want to get involved in OCP, but I want to do it with, as you said, people who are familiar with the European market, also who are not in sales and marketing, but also doers, people who have deployed these solutions. How do they connect? We have opencompute.org online. How else?
They can reach reach to us, reach to the EMEA community.
I think there's regions. If we're on the homepage, you can go to regions.
You can actually go to regions, go Europe, go to EMEA. There's actually the EMEA Project Community website where you can actually find the wiki. You can actually find the mailing list. You can actually subscribe to the calendar. We are doing monthly update calls where we actually inviting not only OCP members to actually give updates on events, on how to participate, how to make submissions.
So you can call into the calls. There's no charge. You don't have to be a member or anything, right?
No, everything is completely open. I think that if you want to actually become an OCP member, if you want to contribute, I think that you have to actually go over the participation process and subscribe.
Yeah, there's membership, but if you want to participate, but just to learn and just to find out who's involved, and then there's recordings too. If you go to those pages,
everything is in there. Everything is in the wiki. All of the texts from the industry representatives in Europe are there.
And this summit, we'll publish all the slides from this summit too.
Absolutely, as well. We had very nice discussions about the EMEA deployments, about circularity, about the data center industry, and how OCP is actually helping in that. So yeah, it's been a very nice. Well, it's still going, but at least we are actually we had a great day yesterday, and we are looking for the same today. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, it sounds like with a lot of the changes just in the last 12, 18 months with AI, with a renewed focus on sustainability, it feels in some way that OCP is kind of having history's repeating itself from 10, 13 years ago when it first started. There was all this excitement and all this change, and how are we gonna scale compute? It seems like we're doing it again, and then especially in Europe, because you have entire countries that have one or no providers. This is very exciting for Europe because it's all new.
And I think that the key topic here is change, and how do you drive change?
Yeah,
I think that for instance, AI and ML is driving a fundamental change in the data center industry.
Sure,
that actually touches all of the layers of a data center.
Yeah, I'd like to say that even it makes the layers more closely coupled.
Exactly, you're actually crumbling data centers in a way.
Yeah.
If you think about it, right?
Yeah.
And that actually opens the possibility to implementing this kind of solutions. So you're actually creating opportunity with that change.
Yeah.
To adopt, to be ready for the future, and to adopt radical solutions that will help you. And actually, most of the worry right now in Europe is, okay, how can I implement this kind of very dense, very powerful AI solutions with those crazy requirements for a data center operator?
Yeah, you have requirements pushing down with demand on the other side.
In a sustainable way as well, right? How I can tick all of the boxes with all of that. This is actually a challenge by itself. So most of the time you're actually seeing that implementing this kind of solutions in a brownfield deployments, in a data center that is actually already there, and you have a challenge there. So I think that most of those changes are actually going to be driven by AI, and they will open the door to the possibility to adopt open hardware as well.
Fantastic. I think that's a great way to close it. I think that's a great summary of what we've been talking about. So, Raul, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you.
Very excited to catch up with you again.
Yeah, me too.
As we move forward. These are all brand new things. So hopefully our listeners will reach out and we can catch up again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course.